All right, welcome into the Slobberknocker Sports College Football Show. I got a special guest back on with me, Wes Miller. Thanks for being here, my Texas insider, my college football expert. I think we're going to start doing some more content together on here, so I'm excited about that.
Likewise,
had a great conversation last time when we went over the playoff games and the SEC championship game, and now we're going to go over all these playoff games. Give me your thoughts. First round, we saw a lot of blowouts, right? A lot of people had things to say about teams, whether they deserved to be in or didn't, right? And I'm just curious, what was your takeaway from round one in that aspect?
I think I would open with we're never going to get it right, regardless of what people expect or what they want. I know there's a lot of inherent SEC bias, like what we talked about on our last show. So people are like, well, Alabama or Ole Miss would have been much more exciting football. It's like, well, you play the games for a reason. Oklahoma, 6-6 Oklahoma team beat Alabama by 3 touchdowns.
Who, by the way, lost to Navy in their bowl game.
Yeah, exactly. So it's for me, it's there's no transitive property that exists in college football, and it's hard to say what should and shouldn't be. But I will say that the opening round of the playoff was not that exciting, right? Notre Dame dominates Indiana, regardless if that was a 10-point game. Yeah. I think that everybody would agree that Texas, for the most part, dominated Clemson, at least on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I know Cade Klubnik played like Superman, which we had talked about. He was going to have to play like Superman in order to make that game close, which he did against the best secondary in college football.
Yep.
But Texas, for the most part, dominated that game. We'll see if the Jaden Blue coming out party continues. And then when you look at the Penn State SMU game, I think a lot of people will look at the score and immediately think that Penn State dominated the football game, which they did not, at least through the first quarter. I don't know how Penn State made Kevin Jennings look so average. I know that their defense is legit, but Kevin Jennings was basically gift wrapping them Matt Schaub like pick sixes, over and over and over again. They have a 4th down play inside the 10-yard line, little play action rollout. Tough play, very kind of strange how it was a bang play, tight end drops it in the end zone. That was an entertaining game for a little bit, and then Ohio State just beat the shit out of Tennessee. And
that was bad.
To me right now, Ohio State looks like the best team in college football. So
yep.
those are my opening round takeaways. But I think that what we're going to find this week is going to be the de facto who is going to be in the national championship, moving forward.
So do you? I guess a question would be, because maybe your thoughts on Ohio State have been that the whole time. But I agree, they looked like the best team. What I don't know what Tennessee was. I know a lot of people thought they were going to beat Ohio State. I did not. I really didn't. I didn't think Nico playing in the cold was a good. I don't think he's very good anyway, at least not at this point in his career. He might end up being much better. I thought that was a really tough spot for him to go in that weather. Against that defense, who's been really, really good besides one data point, which was Oregon. That Tennessee offense is not Oregon. So I don't know. I don't know what I guess my point is, I don't know what to take away yet from that game, because I agree with you in the sense that if Ohio State plays to their peak, I don't know if maybe Texas is the only team I would say that it would be those two. I just Will Howard, to me, I'm not sold. I know he played well in that game. I don't know. I don't know.
Will Howard to me is like Quinn Ewers, you watch.
Good point.
So if Will Howard can stretch the field vertically and they can utilize guys like Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, and I'm even blanking on the third, Arden Tate. They could actually stretch the field vertically and they have a downfield passing game on top of Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, holy shit, man, that is the scariest offense in college football. Yep. I know that Oregon's got weapons all over the field. I know you got Dylan Gabriel. Don't care. If Ohio State can stretch the field vertically like that, I don't see how you can beat them. I really don't. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. like I don't think Texas has the big name stars like an Ohio State does at least in the skill positions on the outside, but Texas has been running the football all over everybody save Georgia. If Quinn Ewers would be able to actually stretch the field vertically, Isaiah Bond comes back healthy, maybe that's the only comparison that I can make.
Yeah.
They can actually play complementary football with a really good defense. I think that's the only other team, to be honest. I think what we're going to see, and I know we're going to get into this, is the winner of Ohio State, Oregon. The de facto national championship game is going to be Texas and whatever the next team is.
I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. I think that is the national championship, especially now with, not that I think Carson Beck is incredible by any means, but with him out, I wasn't sure about Georgia anyway. I know they beat Texas twice. Every other team I've seen them play, they've just not looked great. I don't know what it is about that matchup. Texas should have been up 21-0 in the first half against Georgia. We talked about this. It just, the way that game played out was so fortunate for Georgia that Texas didn't capitalize in the red zone, and that the fact that game was remotely close was bad. The officiating was horrific in that game.
The play calling, man. Can we dive? Can we take a deep dive?
Go ahead.
Not even a deep dive. Yeah. I need to talk about this because
I agree.
You and I talked about this live during the game, and then I talked about it with friends. I talked about it with former colleagues that actually work in the Texas media space. But motherfucker, man, watching that game was so goddamn frustrating. And what to make it worse is a couple of my buddies came in from out of town for the Texas A&M game. Okay, we got pissed drunk. We watched the game, had a great time. I drove up to Houston the next weekend, or for the SEC championship game, to get up there and kind of return the favor, right? You came down here, I'll go up there. I had a goddamn Aggie at this house party that we went to, just talking in my ear after every fucking play, right? And I'm like, dude, you will never taste what I'm tasting right now. You'll never be here, okay? So I don't want to hear your shit. But watching the way they lost the game just made it all the worse. So here's what I'm going to say. In the first half, we saw a version of Quinn Ewers that was similar to Ann Arbor, right? Then, for whatever reason, fuck the red zone, inside the 35-yard line, period, Texas falls apart. I know not having Isaiah Bond is a big deal. I get it. Where the fuck was Gunner Helm? Where was he at?
Great. Yeah,
I think he had one catch.
Yep, he was non-existent.
And so Texas can't run the ball for whatever reason. I think that Georgia, though, is really elite in terms of their run fits and gap integrity and just playing really good run defense overall. That's just a monster front set. Like you got, Mykel Williams, you got Jalen Carter, Malachi Starks on the outside, who Matthew Golden was taking was taken to the woodshed, by the way. Matthew Golden was going all over the field. DeAndre Moore played really well. It's just
Matthew Golden and DeAndre Moore had 17 catches combined, and everybody else had like 6 combined.
For over 200 yards. To be fair to Quinn, in the first half, he had 2 drop touchdown passes.
He did.
Big deal. Second half, total debacle. But this is what I was saying the last time we talked, that for whatever reason, Quinn Ewers has one quarter that is a total debauchery.
He's single fucking
and it's his passer rating. It's either his passer rating or his QBR is like what is considered statistically average or above average is like a 145. Right. Man, he had 2 quarters, I think 3 quarters collectively against Georgia where it was sub 100, and it's just I don't get it, man. He threw a punt that could have been fair caught inside the 10-yard line at a crucial part of the game. I hate the Arch Manning package. Regardless, we're going to move on. Texas should have won that game. They didn't. Burt Auburn sucks. Moving on. I think that when they came out against Clemson, Texas went back to what they do best, and they ran the football down Clemson's throat. I thought Quinn played an excellent first half.
He did.
Thought he played very, very well. Then for whatever reason in the third quarter, we're not really opening up the playbook. We're going away from the run for whatever reason. Trey Wisner and Cameron Williams go out. I got real nervous, to be honest. When I saw Cam Williams go down and I saw Trey Wisner go down, and then Jaden Blue, my holy Lord and Savior, comes in and runs all up and down the field. I can't wait for –
I got to give you credit where credit's due, because on the show you said it's coming. I don't know when it's coming, but it's coming. And that, I mean, it was two massive fucking runs.
He's just different, man. He's different with the ball in his hand. I think the word that I used was just more dynamic. when he has the ball and he's the fastest player on the Texas roster outside of Isaiah
He's
Bond.
insanely explosive. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just a different level of explosiveness when he touches the ball compared to anybody else on the roster.
Exactly. Now you get a guy like Isaiah Bond back if he's healthy. Well, hey, now you have a different level of you have more dynamic players on the field, and I think it opens up the playbook for Sark. We'll see what happens, man. But I'm excited for this week's slate of games.
Yeah, let's jump into it. Let's go. Let's start since we've been on the Texas topic and we've kind of led into this right here. We talked about Georgia. We talked about Clemson. Let's talk about this matchup. Texas comes in against Arizona State. Arizona State, obviously winners of the Big 12. Would they be in the playoff if they didn't win the Big 12? Absolutely not. For some fucking reason, I keep seeing quotes and press clippings of Sam Leavitt and Scadaboo talking about how they're going to, like, I saw Leavitt say, I'm going to prove I'm the better quarterback than Quinn Ewers. I saw Scadaboo saying, I'm going to run all over them. Like, I don't know what usually the teams that talk like that as big underdogs aren't real. I don't see how this team competes with Texas. You tell me if you disagree, but I was looking at it and we'll dump. I want to hear your keys to the game. I want you to deep dive everything because I love listening to you talk about Texas football. But from my perspective, what I see is this, just based on the surface level. Texas has the number one pass protecting offensive line in college football. Now I'm curious the health of Cam Williams and Jake Majors, right? Concussion, correct? Or I don't know if was it a concussion? I don't know what it was.
He's gonna play.
He's gonna play. Okay, so number one pass protecting group in college football, according to Pro Football Focus, going up against the 132nd ranked pass rushing defense out of 134 FBS teams. They get no pressure on the quarterback. Texas protects better than anybody. And the secondary for Arizona State is not good. I just don't see how they stop Texas. I think Texas has to stop Texas for this to be remotely close. That's my opinion. I obviously could. We've seen Georgia had some success running the ball 2 times. This is not Georgia. Right? It's not the same talent on the offensive line. It's not the same caliber of 4-star and 5-star guys. This is Arizona State. I see Texas blowing them out of the water, and I'm usually pretty pessimistic. Tell me your thoughts on the game. Deep dive. Take this wherever you want to go.
I'll start with Arizona State. I'm going to take you back real quick, and this is going to feed into Arizona State to last year. Okay, so Texas is going to Ames, Iowa, to play Iowa State on the road. They have to beat Iowa State. They go to the Big 12 championship game, and then they have to beat Iowa State. They crush Texas Tech. They crush Oklahoma State, win the Big 12, go to the playoff. Jared Huffer was a starting interior offensive lineman for Iowa State last year, and he went out and talked a whole bunch of shit prior to that game. And Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, I mean, I'll use the word annihilated the interior of the Iowa State offensive line. They couldn't do anything. Then they go and play the Big 12 championship against Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon's talking all that shit. We'll get Texas held to under 40 rushing yards. Okay. For whatever reason, when you give this team bulletin board material, it never ends up well. And by the way, I wouldn't really talk that much shit when one of the best pass rushers in college football, in Colin Simmons, who is a true freshman and won freshman of the year, is coming in with 11 sacks. It's going to be a field day in that backfield. Now, when you look at Arizona State top to bottom, no Jordan Tyson. Big deal, right? Jordan Tyson not being available against the best secondary in college football, that's going to pose a really big problem. So what Arizona State's going to do is they're going to look at this as a battering ram, shrink the game, right? Yep. And so, yes, you can do that with a guy like Scadaboo, but not against this front, not against this defense. I don't see unless Leavitt comes out in a Cade Klubnik style and just throws for 4 or 5 touchdowns. I don't see it. I don't see a path to a win at all.
Nobody on the outside, nobody in their receiving core outside of Tyson scares me at all from what I've seen on tape. And you probably deep dive it more than I do, but I look back and I watched a lot of game film of them. No one scares me on that roster. Obviously, they're a very good screen team. I think they use running back screens more than anybody in the country, but they just, besides, obviously Scadaboo is great. He's great, but nobody on the outside. They're going to be one-dimensional, like you said, unless Leavitt just plays. He's got to be Superman. And even with Klubnik being Superman last week, Texas still covered the spread as a 13.5 point favorite. How do they win? I agree with you. I don't see a path here.
I love Kenny Dillingham. I think he's one of the up and coming. I think he's going to be a really, 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 really good college football coach outside. He's going to get out of G5 and he's going to go to Power 4 and do some really cool stuff. But to be fair, you never know when you have a guy like Scadaboo. Scadaboo is different, man. He's not just a in between the tackles guy. He catches the ball really well out of the backfield. The problem again,
receiving yards.
The problem for Arizona State is you have, at least in terms of when you look at the linebacking core for Texas and how they're utilizing coverage, Anthony Hill is going to be all over Scadaboo. But also look for Levitt to be able to create plays with his legs. The guy can move. He makes good throws off platform. I'm telling you right now, Levitt's a future NFL player.
Really?
Period. Oh, yeah. He's the real deal. He's already getting put in like Heisman odds for next season in the top 10.
I didn't know that.
He's a good player. But for him to come out and say that he wants to prove to the world he's a better quarterback, it's not going to happen. Arizona State's banged up at the skill position. They're going to have to lean so heavily on Scadaboo. He's going to get absolutely – they're going to have to – that guy's going to get maybe 25 carries. And that's not a recipe for success against a team like Texas. Texas, again, like what we spoke about in the last podcast or the last show, they're like Michigan from a year ago where they're not going to blow you out on the scoreboard, but they're going to dominate you on both lines of scrimmage. They're like a boa constrictor. This is a matchup nightmare for Arizona State. You look at Texas, Cam Williams is back healthy. Jake Majors is healthy. Kelvin Banks had another 10 days of rest, so he's going to be fully healthy. Isaiah Bond comes back. Texas is going to come into this game completely healthy across the board. Quinn Ewers, ankle's not as big of an issue anymore. We saw him in the first half last week. Looked really good. I think that Texas is going to definitely cover. I think the spread right now is 12.5.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that line's probably going to move up prior to Wednesday, and I see them covering without a doubt in my mind.
I think so too. And to your point about Levitt having to use his legs, I kind of agree. And we talked about Klubnik and how important his legs have been. 13 carries for 5 yards against Texas. So they've done a good job against running quarterbacks. They did it against in the Texas A&M game against a mobile quarterback as well. They did a good job containing him. So, I don't know that Levitt will be able to win with his legs, but I agree. Like it just feels like he's got to have like a monster game. A monster game to just keep it remotely close.
A key stat I think we should look at, though, with the Clemson game is if you remove sack yardage from the rushing totals, Klubnik was effective running the ball. Like
how many sacks did he take?
I think 4. Let me take a look real quick just so I can.
That's the one thing that I don't like about college football is that it skews the rushing stats with sacks.
Yeah, so they might have had more. They maybe even got up to 7. Let me take a look. So they had 1, 2, 3. No, they only had 3 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. But Klubnik finished with 5 rushing yards. But he had the longest rush of the day was 11 yards.
11. He had an 11-yard scramble. Yep.
Kind of gives you an idea of what that looked like. But they even threw in some design quarterback runs for Klubnik in that game. So I don't know. I still think Texas covers. I really don't think it fucking matters what the Arizona State game plan is coming in. I think that Texas, even if they played vanilla football, is just going to win the game outright by multiple scores.
One more question. I agree with you 100%. I think that's I think you broke it down perfectly. One more question for you, and I think I know the answer, but just curious. Any concern with the fact that, and I think it's kind of the rule of there's like this old college basketball rule that I think this applies to, where it's like you're going to play 25 games at your level. You're going to play 5 way below and 5 way above. And that game for Klubnik was one of his way above games. He was incredible. But does it concern you at all that he threw as well as he did on Texas's defense? I know they've been the best secondary in the country all year. He threw for 336. He had an 82 QBR. Was it just what I'm saying, where it's just one of those one-off where he's back home in Austin, he played an incredible game, or is there any concern about what we saw and how he did that against them going forward? Maybe not for Arizona State, but for either Ohio State or Oregon in what might be a de facto national championship game in a couple weeks.
Well, looking forward with Ohio State and Oregon, you got to clean it up. Multiple coverage burns on their last touchdown drive. On the drive where Texas had the goal line stand and Bill Norton made the play of his life. They went after Manny Muhammad, something I have not seen all season. I think they threw at him 4 straight times.
Yep.
I mean, it was reminiscent of Michael Penix in the Sugar Bowl last year, right? Just dropping him in the bucket. So I think to answer your question, it's a mixture of both. I think Cade Klubnik came way up high and played the best game of his college career. And on the back end, the Texas secondary had a mediocre day, right? Because for the most part, they kept everything in front of them. And even when they went man-to-man across the board, Klubnik, sometimes as a defensive back, man, like the quarterback throws a good ball, you're playing good in pass coverage, and you give up a completion. Like, it happens. But no, I'm not concerned at all. You got the Thorpe Award winner back there. You have the highest rated safety per PFF in college football, Michael Taft. Andrew Makuba's probably been the best defensive player on that team over the last 3 to 4 weeks. And then like, even in the rotation piece, he's still got Kobe Black, and Gavin Holmes made a couple big plays in that game. I just don't see Levitt making a difference like what we saw Klubnik do.
Yep. I don't either. And I also think, like we mentioned earlier, with Tyson out and the lack of weapons, even some of those guys like Wesco, there's some NFL level receivers they're guys who are going to be NFL players in that Clemson receiving room that Arizona State does not have. So that's another aspect as well, I would say.
Interesting dynamic. Arizona State has multiple scholarship players that played at Texas. Troy O'Mary. You have Jamon Tapp. You have Jake Smith, who is currently 3rd on the team in receptions with 6. So I'm at least in terms of the skill positions. So I'm telling you, it's a very interesting dynamic at play. Zach Swanson, again, a couple weeks back, prior to Texas even playing Clemson, was like, oh yeah, well, this is more of a family than what I experienced in Austin. Talked all that shit. Yeah. Well, and the phrase for Texas all season has been "fuck around, find out." I think that on Wednesday it's going to be a healthy dose of "fuck around, find out."
I completely agree. I think we're going to see a lopsided scoreboard similar to the games we saw in the first round across the board. Let's move on to another game that might be lopsided. I'm curious your thoughts on it. Penn State taking on Boise State. This is the game tomorrow night, New Year's Eve. Penn State comes in, obviously very similar situation to Texas, right? Lost in the conference championship game. Got a beneficial draw, getting to play a home game against a lower level team. We talked about it, or you mentioned it, how you didn't think, and I agree with you, that Penn State did not dominate the box score. The way the scoreboard looked was not indicative of totally how the game went against SMU, but now they get another favorable draw on a neutral field. They're taking on, it's the Fiesta Bowl, I believe, and they're taking on Boise State, obviously very similar to Arizona State, right? Winners of their conference, not a very good conference, only got in because of that automatic bid. What are your thoughts on this game? Does Penn State have a huge advantage here, or is Boise a live dog?
I still think Drew Aller sucks at football. Like I said,
I do too. He's fucking horrible. He's terrible.
I know scouts love him because he's big. He's got a big arm. Arm talent wise, a guy can throw the football a mile. But I see this being a fourth quarter game, and not because of the way that a lot of people think. I don't think that this is going to be necessarily like a defensive matchup. I don't think that Boise State can stop guys like Keytron Allen and Nick Singleton. I think that Penn State's going to try to establish their dominance, at least on the offensive side of the football, on the ground. Of course, you have to dominate both lines of scrimmage. And I think that Penn State's going to try to run the absolute piss out of the ball, number one. And number two, on the flip side, I don't think Boise State can block Abdul Carter because nobody can. So
nobody can block them, especially not that O-line.
No, I mean, Maddox Madsen's been doing some good stuff in the pocket, and honestly, outside the pocket. I thought in that conference championship game, he played out of his mind.
That was the best game he's played all season by far, in my opinion.
On the biggest stage. The kid's a baller.
I was impressed. I have not been impressed with him most of the year, but he was great in that game.
And what do we say? They're going to run a lot of RPO. It's exactly what they did. Ashton Jeanty, of course, did Ashton Jeanty things. Again, no one has been able to stop Ashton Jeanty. Of course, Penn State's a different animal in that regard altogether. So I think this is going to be really like a fourth quarter game. I'm thinking 24-17 in the fourth quarter can kind of go either way. You don't know what game you're going to get out of the Boise State offense. I'm pretty confident that Penn State will probably rush for 150 plus in that game between Keytron Allen and Nick Singleton.
Yep. Yeah, if you look at it, stat I was looking at earlier, Boise State's 133rd in the country in tackling. They are the literal second worst team in the country in missed tackles. They are horrific tackling. We've seen it most of this year. I also think it's interesting. You look at some of the down the stretch scores, and I know they played really good against UNLV, but they played a game in Laramie against Wyoming late in the year, 17-13 against Wyoming. Barely escaped that game with a win. Very well could have lost the game. One of the more deceiving scores I've seen this year is the San Jose State game. That was a tie game, and San Jose State converted a fourth down inside of 9 minutes to go in Boise territory, and the dude fumbled after converting the first down. San Jose State fumbles, they go down and score, and the way it got out of hand, it was just the scoreboard wasn't close to indicative of how that game went. Very well could have lost the game outright and ended up winning by 21. So they've had some close calls. Obviously, I think a lot of people who do think Boise State, not the way you broke it down. I like the way you broke it down, but I'm saying I think a lot of people look back at that Oregon game and think, well, they played Oregon close. They could maybe play, they'll play Penn State close here. And that was in Austin, which they did play really well in that game. But like you said, the defense, I just don't see how they slow down this rushing attack. The one thing I will say on the other side of the ball that I think is really interesting, and I talked about this when we broke down the game against SMU last week, Penn State versus SMU. Penn State's defense, when defending the run against traditional formations, is top 10 in the country. They're phenomenal. Yep. When you spread them out, they drop outside the top 80. And they allow over 2 more yards per rush when you're running out of spread formations. I don't know if Boise will break tendency. I know they run RPOs some. A lot of the times they run Ashton Jeanty into a wall. I'm curious to see the game plan here because if I'm Boise and I'm looking at that, and it's like if I line up under center or in traditional formations and try to run the ball at that defense, you're fucked. I don't see a path. But if you do some different things and have some wrinkles, you had how many 3 weeks to prepare, right? You probably knew you were playing Penn State at this point. So I think they have an ability if they're good enough from a game planning perspective to have some of those wrinkles. I don't know. But like you said, nobody's been able to stop Ashton Jeanty. We'll see. I don't know if they can have success, even with as good as Genty's been, just lining up and running it at them. I just don't know that they're going to do that.
You know what I'm going to be looking for is a lot of balls being thrown behind the line of scrimmage, a lot of screen game stuff, of course, a lot of RPO stuff. Because when you play against teams, that's what makes Sark so good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that he adapts game planning based on the defense, which is, that sounds like that should be table stakes whenever you're game planning for a team, but sometimes you build that into your offensive tendency, like what you're already used to, right? And so I think that we're going to see a lot of balls being thrown behind the line of scrimmage, the quick screen game, bubble screen game, RPO stuff. I do not see it being just front versus front. Let's just see if Ashton Jeanty can break a couple tackles and break a big one. That's not a recipe for success.
No. I mean, if you see that coming out, if like the first couple series, we see them run up the middle, understand run up the middle, and try to run play action off of that, I think this is going to be a bloodbath. If they are mixing it up early, I think what you said is very possible, where we see a very tight game late and it comes down to a one possession game. And I think we're going to see that. I think you're right. I don't think they're going to just line it up and run it straight at them. I think they know that won't work. You would think.
Yeah. So, I mean, SMU is not they're not an excellent running team by any means, right? When you look at where they're good, they have explosive players in space, like to get the ball to. Quarterback didn't play well. They lose the game, even though that game was interesting in the first quarter. Yeah. Now you take a team that is elite in running the football, whether that's because they have a good front or you have a special player in the backfield like Ashton Jeanty. It just changes the entire dynamic of potential outcomes. Now, the thing that you have to get from Maddox Madsen, number one, no turnovers.
Yeah.
Number two, being able to get the ball to your players in space behind the line of scrimmage. Number three, control the game. Kevin Jennings looked like he was a deer in headlights playing in Happy Valley. And that's a very intimidating place to play. bowl game in domes and in these neutral site type of settings, it's a totally different dynamic, right?
Great
And
point.
I think that Penn State, part of the reason why they kind of got through that first quarter a little bit, it's like, oh, we're at home, we got the crowd, never hit the panic button.
Yep.
I think Boise keeps this thing close, man. I'm not saying they're going to win the game, but I think they're going to keep it close. What's the spread on that right now?
11.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I know.
I think Boise State covers. I think they cover.
I almost want to watch the first two series of the game and see what the game plan looks like. Because I do think if Boise decides to go the way we're talking about, there's a very good chance that they keep it within this number and they have a shot late.
Something to think about right now is that Ashton Genty has 2,500 yards on the season. If they win, does he touch 3,000?
Oh man.
And then if you look back and he does touch 3,000, is that just an absolute robbery in the Heisman voting?
I think it already is a robbery of the Heisman vote, in my opinion. I
think
they robbed him blind. I went to the Alamo Bowl and watched Travis Hunter and Shadura the other day, and I know it was a meaningless bowl game, but man, that was a fucking pathetic performance from the. That was
pretty sad. I mean, Deion talked all that shit about, well, if you're going to play here, you're going to play in the bowl game, no opt-outs, blah blah blah. Well. I saw Travis Hunter limping off the field there in the fourth quarter at the end of that game. So
yeah. It was not pretty. We left with 8 minutes to go. We're like, fuck this. We're out of here. We were in the second row too. Yeah, I was like, fuck this.
Don't blame you.
Yeah, but I agree. And I think he's 134 yards away from breaking the record. Is that right?
Which he
Something
will.
like that. Which he will.
I think tomorrow he gets 150.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
tomorrow.
agree. Yeah, tomorrow night. Which I can't wait. I'm so excited.
It's a good hangover. It's like a good hangover game. Or like a good little build up. I enjoyed watching them even on the day prior to the Texas game. Man, I'm gonna be so hungover for that game. I'll be so hungover for the Texas game.
You have to save a little bit of energy for noon.
I know.
Take a liquid IV. All right, let's go. We got two more games. Let's go to the one at 4:00. Ohio State and Oregon. This is the probably the game of the day. I know Notre Dame, Georgia is basically a pick 'em too, but these two teams likely, like you said, the winner of this is really going to play Texas as probably a de facto national championship game. People might not like that, but it's pretty true in my opinion.
Hard to argue facts.
Exactly right, exactly. And we see this again. Ohio State comes in with 2 losses, already having lost to Oregon, given the game was at Autzen Stadium, but they are a 2.5-point favorite. And the reason being for what we mentioned earlier when we discussed a little bit about Ohio State, which is when they played at their peak, they're the best team in the country. It's them or Texas, right? And so as good as Oregon is, as many skill players as they have on the outside, as good as Tez Johnson is, and Dylan Gabriel has looked incredible this year in stretches, this Ohio State team is incredibly talented. This is going to be a fun matchup. Is there any advantage for Ohio State having film of already it's hard to beat a team twice, people say, hard to beat a team 2 times, especially now in a playoff scenario where it's like, man, Oregon's got all this pressure. They're undefeated all year, and Ohio State's looking to prove everybody wrong. I'm sure people are picking Ohio State. I'm not saying they're not, but the feeling 2 weeks ago is like Ryan Day's fired and this team is fucking dead. And now all of a sudden it's like, man,
that was the feeling to the casual college football fan that doesn't understand shit about college football.
Agreed.
And the radical fan base that is Ohio State. Okay, guys.
That's the extra part. It was that in addition to their entire fucking fan base. It was like chanting fire Ryan Day. Yes.
Let me tell you something, Ohio State fans. If you're calling for Ryan Day's job, do us all a favor and go fuck yourself, because everybody would kill to be in the position of Ohio State. Okay. Yes, Ryan Day has lost to Michigan 4 times. I know that sucks. But you've been in you are a perennial college football playoff attendee, if you would. Number 1. Number 2, you're competing for national championships every single year. And number 3, Ryan Day just put together the best roster in college football and swallowed his pride enough to the point to hand over the offensive reins to Chip Kelly to take over play calling duties. Now, about this game, the biggest point of contention that I have is when I do look at the issues that Ryan Day has, can he get out of Ryan Day's way? Can Ryan Day beat himself? because because the Michigan game, oh my gosh, man, that was such a stamp of what the fuck are we doing? Right.
Yeah.
Like that was concerning watching the game plan. And it was, well, as long as we just control time of possession, we're going to win the game. That's not how this works, bud. Okay. Especially in a big game.
Inferior team. It made absolutely no sense.
And a rival at that, a hated rival at that. So Ryan Day has yet to earn the benefit of the doubt in the big game, in my opinion. That being said, Dan Lanning doesn't get the benefit of that doubt either.
No, he doesn't. Yeah.
And so when I take a look at the game top to bottom, okay, Ohio State had a handful of missed opportunities in Eugene the first time they played, right? Will Howard makes one of the more controversial decisions in taking that slide underneath 2 seconds, trying to get up and call timeout. If they do get the timeout off, to kick the field goal to win the game. I think Ohio State. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, I also think people forget in that game that there was a play with about a minute to go before that whole scenario where Jeremiah Smith caught a ball inside the 20-yard line for a first down, and the game was essentially over. They were going to run the clock down and kick a 30-yard field goal, and they called OPI that would not have been called anywhere but Autzen Stadium. And so that one call changed who won that game and changed the course of the Big Ten for the rest of the season. And
I totally agree.
That. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that one play.
That's why I'm taking Ohio State. I'm taking Ohio State to win this game. I think they're going to win by 7. I think it's either going to be 7 or 2 scores. 2 scores meaning 10. What's the spread right now? It's got to be a pick 'em, right? Is it underneath 2?
It's 2.5. 2.5. Okay. Ohio State 2.5.
It's a pick 'em, right?
Yes.
Oregon's not going to cover. I think that Ohio State wins by a touchdown to maybe 10 points. I look at the roster top to bottom. They're too loaded, and Jeremiah Smith right now is just playing at a different level. Not to mention you have Tate in the slot. You have Emeka Egbuka. Oh, sorry. I mean, they move Emeka Egbuka all over the place. Almost reminds me of Devontae Smith at Alabama. But they are so elite at the skill positions, and I think they caught their stride last week. And man, nothing is more scary than a giant in college football when they just come off beating the shit out of a good team, right? Oregon got a first-round bye. They've had a lot of time off. Yep. And a lot of time off is usually never a good thing in college football.
Nope. It's not. It's very, very different than a bye in the NFL, which isn't always good in the NFL, but it's such a grind in the NFL that getting a bye sometimes is helpful health-wise. College football is much more rhythmic, I believe.
Totally agree.
That's what's going to be an issue here. Also, the last time we saw Oregon, look, I had put this as a bet your fucking mortgage and your baby and your fucking car on Oregon to beat Penn State, and they did. But I'll tell you what, it got a little dicey late.
Drew Aller also played out of his mind.
He did play well, but what was really concerning to me was the fact that, and I know Penn State runs the ball well, but almost 9 yards per carry, they were gashing Oregon's front, them. And so what does Ohio State do here with Judkins and Henderson? Like, I don't know. If they're able to run the ball and open up and have Oregon guessing and keep them on their heels, right? Like, I don't know how Oregon wins this game. I'm with you. I think Ohio State wins this by a touchdown. Now, the caveat is, or the other side of the coin is, if Will Howard can't get out of his own way and he turns the ball over a couple times and they start to get in their own head like they do when they get down and Oregon gets a lead. Michigan. Exactly. I mean, is this a lock? No. But I think both of us feel that, if these teams both play to their peaks, Ohio State wins. If these teams both play to the mid, like if they're playing at the same level regardless, Ohio State's going to win this game. Oregon has to really play better to win this game. And I think Oregon's defense is really concerning to me. And I know Drew Aller played really well, and I know Penn State runs the ball well, but I can't get what I watched out of my head where I'm like, I'm watching this game and I'm like, man, they're in control. They're up 2-3 scores. And they're just running the ball down their throats. Oregon was up big, and Penn State is one-dimensional, and they're running the ball down their throat. Like, I don't understand it.
What you're going to see is you're going to see Ohio State run the shit out of the ball, number one. And then number two, you're going to see Will Howard in the quarterback run game. He's going to be an added dimension to that run game because You have to bring another defender in order to compensate for that run game, and I don't think that Oregon has like their front seven. They played out of their mind in aughts in the first one they played. Like, we didn't see Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins really take over that game. We saw a lot of the skill guys on the outside for Ohio State and Will Howard to a degree play pretty well. Yeah. But let's say they do have success running the ball. Well, if that's the case, you lost. If Ohio State has success running the football, what are you going to do? Let them open it up to the three best skill player, the best wide receiving core in college football?
That's my point.
No.
Yeah, that's my point. I agree.
No way. It's Ohio State.
I think it's Ohio State. I think they're the side. I think they win this game by a touchdown. I do hope I'm wrong, because I like Oregon and I don't root for Ohio State ever.
I hate Ohio State. I hate Ohio State.
Can't stand
them. I love watching Oregon.
I do too. And I really hope I'm wrong. I hope Oregon beats them, and I hope it's Texas-Oregon in the semifinals. That would be a really fun matchup. I think we're going to see Texas-Ohio State playing to go to the national title against whoever wins this next game.
As a Texas fan, you want Oregon to win this game.
Absolutely, you want Oregon to win this game because you have a talent. Yes, you absolutely want Oregon to win this game. You do not want to see Ohio State, because now you're not you don't have an advantage talent-wise. Nope. And so you're going to have a big advantage in the trenches if Oregon wins this game. Okay,
Texas would run for 200 plus on Oregon.
They really would. They would gash straight. Wisner would have a massive fucking day. Okay, last matchup. Notre Dame, Georgia. We know Carson Beck out for the playoff. Gunner Stockton in. We saw him for a half against Texas. Obviously, you mentioned it when we were talking before the show. He did lead a good drive down the field opening the second half against the Longhorns, but he did not throw the ball very much in that game. I don't know what he is. You might have a better idea than me. Notre Dame, on the other hand, we know what they are. They're a good running team. They have a good defense, and they have a quarterback who's a dual threat, but sometimes he's really just a fucking runner because he's not a very good drop back pass.
He is Will Howard. He's literally Will Howard and a guy like Haynes King.
Yeah,
meshed into like one kind of player, and
actually a really good point. Yeah,
it's confusing to watch Notre Dame, but I tell you what, man, if I was Georgia, I wouldn't want to see Jeremiah Love at all.
Man, he's good.
He's real good, and their backup running back, that Price kid, who is I guess the burner. When I look at this game, first of all, how did Gunner Stockton hold on to that ball when Andrew McCollum knocked his helmet 5 yards into the backfield? His eyes rolled back into his head. He was clearly concussed.
100% concussed.
Carson Beck comes into the game with one arm, and it's like, well, I wonder what the fuck they're going to do, guys. Anyways, that's another frustration.
I wanted to win the SEC championship more than anybody, but looking back, I'm so glad we didn't, just because we're playing Arizona State right now and not having to play fucking Notre Dame Notre Dame. Yeah, I mean Notre Dame.
Yeah, I agree. The Texas Notre Dame match will be fun. I think Texas win.
It would be fun. Yeah.
I think Texas win that game. But look, man, Gunner Stockton is about to walk into a buzzsaw. That Notre Dame defense is for real. They are really, really good. It would be essentially like Gunner Stockton playing like the version of Georgia that showed up to Texas. Like that's how I would look at how this game's going to go. You never want to put an inexperienced backup quarterback in this type of scenario. They're going to have to do a whole bunch of shit from a game planning perspective to make sure he can take and make easy throws, easy completions. They're going to ride ETN. I don't see, like, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, it's the dogs all the way. Hey, man, if I were to bet money line, I'd probably bet Notre Dame money line. To be honest, like, I think that Notre Dame's going to win this game. I really do. Wow. And this might sound controversial because I said Boise might keep it close to Penn State. I know I've said a couple things. I predicted that Texas might win by 3 touchdowns.
I like it.
But guys, just sit back and take your bias out of the equation and just objectively look at both teams. This is a bad matchup for Georgia. Now, a lot of people would say, well, Notre Dame's just a ground and pound team. You'd make it seem like, well, that's an excellent matchup for Georgia. Really? Ask them how they feel about Georgia Tech. Because Haynes King and Georgia Tech ran all fucking over Georgia. I think they had over 250 yards rushing.
They had 260 yards rushing on 47 carries.
They went to 8 overtimes?
8 overtimes.
Now substitute Haynes King and Buddy from Georgia Tech, played really well. Hats off to you. Now substitute that with Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love. No, thank you. I want no part of that. Georgia has a problem with the quarterback run game. It's been evident all season. I think that Notre Dame, if I were to bet money line, I would bet them to win outright. I don't know what's the spread on that game.
It's literally a pick 'em. It's 1. It's Georgia 1.
So then I would be betting Notre Dame money line.
Okay, I agree with everything you said. I don't know. Every time I doubt Kirby Smart, maybe it's just against Texas, but he ends up.
It's a lot of Texas trauma for sure, man.
It is. I think that's in the back of my mind. I picked Georgia in this game when we picked our brackets. I picked Georgia to beat Notre Dame in this game, but you're kind of convincing me Notre Dame's got a real shot here, because I agree with you. When I broke down this game when Georgia played Texas, I'm like, man, the last 4 games, Georgia's allowing over 190 yards running the last 4 games. Of course, Texas is going to be able to run all over them, and then they couldn't run a bit again. And I don't know if that's specific to Texas if I think it is. I think there's something about that matchup that just Texas has had trouble exploiting Georgia and what they do. But every other team has seemed to run the ball on them, at least in the second half of the season. And I do agree with you. It's a great point with the running quarterback. I think they've had trouble, and that is partially the problem with Texas is Quinn Ewers was not a threat to run the ball at all. So it's very simple to key in on just handing it off to the running back and the screen game that Texas uses, which is kind of an extension of the run game.
100%.
It's much simpler, right? Obviously. So, I think you've kind of convinced me here. I don't like Riley Leonard. I just think
he's not very good.
And he's not, and I hate like to me, what pisses me off about Notre Dame is they don't have to play in a fucking conference. They don't have to play a fucking conference championship game. They get to play fucking Army and Navy, and I know they were good this year or better than they've been. Their schedule's garbage, and they just get away with doing that. So they bother me that they get to play a home playoff game by just playing a garbage schedule, losing to fucking Northern Illinois. But all of that said, I've not been impressed with Georgia all year, with the exception of the times they played Texas. And we talked about how Texas should have won the game, at least in the SEC title game for sure. So I'm going to lean with you here. I'm going to say Notre Dame wins this game. I think I'm flipping my tune here. I think Notre Dame's defense is more complete than Georgia's defense. I will say the one thing that I would be a bit nervous about in backing Notre Dame is they have 3 really good corners. But with injuries and portal guys gone, they have no other scholarship corners on the roster. So if any of those 3 guys goes down, they are very, very thin on the outside in the secondary. So that is just one thing. Those guys have got to stay healthy. They cannot have anybody go down at corner. That would really hurt what they do. But Al Golden's done a heck of a job all year. And it seems that he not only comes out with good game plans, but he adjusts really, really well as the game goes on. I think Notre Dame's going to I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game in general. I think
it's going to be a traditional, like, smash mouth game. Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Georgia hasn't had a running back or a leading rusher rush for more than 100 yards all season.
Wow.
All season. So what does that mean? Well, what does that mean? That means that if Notre Dame can turn Georgia, who, by the way, Notre Dame's run defense is legit.
Yeah, they are.
If you turn Georgia and if you put Georgia into a phone booth where they have to throw the ball with an inexperienced backup quarterback, this is not a good matchup for Georgia, guys. It's just not. And if you think it is, you're delusional. You're delusional. Go look at the stats. Go look. Just take a step outside of your bias box. Take a look at the game. Take a look at the matchups. Take a look at the personnel. Georgia's in trouble, guys. And let me tell you, if Georgia comes out and they win this game and they dominate this game, or if they even win outright, I will tell you that I'm wrong, and I will never in my life doubt Kirby Smart ever again. He's already pretty much on the Mount Rushmore, at least of college football coaches right now. I mean, he's won 2 national championships, almost 3-peated. I don't see Georgia winning the game. I literally can't wrap my head around a way that they would win unless the skill guys on the outside all of a sudden do something they haven't done all season, right? So like I'm taking a look at the roster right now. You need to have guys like Arian Smith and Dominic Levitt stop dropping balls. I think that they are in the bottom 100 in the country in drop passes.
That's crazy.
So like, what do you, how can you have an inexperienced backup quarterback and you compliment him with a wide receiving core who drops a lot of footballs? You put them in a phone booth where they can't run the ball. What the fuck are you going to do?
I agree with you 100%. I think this is my, and the last thing I'll kind of say on it is I agree with everything you just said. And to me, and I have had hesitation picking Notre Dame and when I've thought about this, but until I see Gunner Stockton do that, until I see think about how can you expect a guy like that who you've never seen before to come out and play well against a defense, a regular defense, let alone a defense as good as Notre Dame's in a stage like this? I mean, it's just an incredibly difficult spot for the kid, no matter the fact that they've had a couple weeks to prepare him, different than throwing him into the second half of the SEC title game. But man, I just even I think he had like 70 yards passing in that second half. And I want to say 2 of them were like just absurd catches that were balls that were not well thrown. And so I didn't see anything in that half of football that led me to believe like, okay, you give this kid some time and some first team reps, like he'll be okay. I didn't see that. And so until I do see that, and like, I agree with you, I kind of think that I'm going to say the same thing. If I see him come out and perform, I'll come back on here and say I was dead wrong. And Georgia might win a national championship if that's the case, because if they go out if they go out and beat it with this kid and he's better than I expect, then yeah, they could beat whoever comes out and then Texas and Oregon or Texas, Ohio State won't be the de facto national title. But if that kid comes out and does what we think he does, I think Notre Dame wins this game. And I think the winner of Texas and either Ohio State or Oregon is the national champion. So I think that this is gonna be a fascinating matchup. It's gonna be fun to watch. It's the last game of the night. I hope it's close. It's gonna be grinded out. I could see this being like a 17-13 game, real low scoring. And I'm gonna ride with you. I'm gonna say Notre Dame. I think we're on the same side of all 3 of these, but I think we think alike on a lot of them. And I agree. Give me the Irish.
Last thing I'll say about that game is that Notre Dame. And I agree with you, by the way, about how they don't play in a conference, have a weak-ass schedule. Well, people were riding pretty high on Curtis Rourke going into that game, and Notre Dame made him look mediocre.
Great point.
Like mediocre. And I would take Curtis. I think that Georgia would kill to have Curtis Rourke on their roster.
Absolutely, they would at this point. Yes, they would. They would.
I mean, when I look at this game objectively, I can't see it, man. I can't. But if Kirby Smart comes out and they do their thing and they play Georgia football and they win, well, that guy's a magician.
Yep. No, he is. I completely agree. I'll give it to him if he does it. But until I see Gunner Stockton do that, and until I see them beat a really good defense with a backup quarterback in this type of spot with this little time to prepare, I'm not buying it just yet. So give me the Irish here. Yep. All right. Well, that wraps up all of our big game breakdowns. Wes, thanks for joining me and talking college football. Let's do it again next week. Let's break down the let's go and we'll break down all the games and talk about what happened, and then we'll do a preview of the semifinals if you're down.
Let's do it, man. I'm in.
My man. All right. Appreciate you for joining us. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and we will catch you guys next week. Enjoy all the college football games and have a happy New Year.